Isometric strength equals grappling strength. Isometric strength training is where you contract your muscle without moving through a range of motion, without having to move your joints. In contrast to this, dynamic strength training is where you are moving through a range of motion. This is the type of training that you're probably most familiar with. For many sports, dynamic strength training is preferred because it translates to the dynamic movements required by that sport. But is this relevant for grapplers? And is there any point in investing your valuable training time into isometric training? In this episode, we'll be discussing isometric training for grapplers, the science, 3 types of contraction, 2 types of isometrics, how to add isometrics into your training program. Isometric training for grappling, the science. Grappling has both isometric and dynamic movements. Think about grabbing and holding onto your opponent in a gable grip or taking a gi grip. This is a form of isometric strength. Research on MMA athletes has revealed some interesting findings regarding isometric strength. They've shown that you can determine the level of an MMA fighter from amateur, professional, or elite based on the athlete's isometric lumbar strength and maximal upper body strength. This shows that isometric strength is an important factor for MMA athletes and grapplers. Based on these findings, the researchers recommend a combination between heavy strength training, isometric strength training, and ballistic training in the form of Olympic lifting and their derivatives and plyometrics that I discussed in detail in the episode on power for jiu-jitsu. Isometric training has been shown in further research that it develops your dynamic movement. So if you were to do only isometrics, say for example in the form of a half squat, by doing this movement, you will see strength development in a full squat going through the full range of motion. So by doing isometric strength training, not only are you improving your isometric hold capability, but you're also improving your dynamic strength. 3 types of contractions, 2 types of isometrics. There are 3 types of muscle contractions that we need to understand to orientate ourselves when we think about isometric training. 1, the concentric contraction phase. 2, the eccentric contraction phase. And 3, the isometric contraction phase. There are 2 types of isometric strength training: yielding isometrics and overcoming isometrics. Yielding isometrics is when you're holding a position and resisting change. An example of this is the plank. The advantages of yielding isometrics are it's safe on your joints. This can be particularly useful when you're injured, fatigued from grappling, or experiencing joint pain from grappling. It teaches movement patterns and form. Isometric training arguably requires a greater amount of mind-muscle connection, which can then assist you in performing the corresponding dynamic movements. It eliminates momentum and cheat reps. This is most relevant for pause reps, which can be considered a form of isometric training. Imagine a barbell bench press where you pause at the bottom of the lift. Now think about the same movement of the bench press, but now you're bouncing it off your chest using bounce and momentum to complete the rep. Which reps do you think have more beneficial transfer to strength and hypertrophy for grappling? It improves muscular endurance. By fighting against resistance to maintain a position, you're challenging and developing your muscular endurance in that position. This is incredibly useful for jiu-jitsu, which has a high isometric demand on your body. But what about overcoming isometrics? Well, as the name implies, these are movements where you're trying to move an immovable object, or you're trying to overcome an immovable object. The goal here is to exert the maximal amount of force in that position as possible. These movements can be difficult and they're not suitable for everyone, particularly people that may have some joint pain, joint issues, or have a pre-existing injury. This is in contrast to yielding isometrics, which is preferable for developing and maintaining your strength while you're injured. Overcoming isometrics, not so much. The advantages of training for overcoming isometrics are you create maximal muscle activation, you can train specific grappling-centric movements, you can break through your strength plateaus, it causes a different stimulus to your training, one that you may not be used to, and it enables you to train for maximal muscle contraction without having to deal with heavy loads. How to add isometric training into your program. I'm going to talk you through some different scenarios where I'd recommend including isometrics into your training program for grappling performance. Scenario 1, you're fatigued from grappling, you're experiencing joint pain, or you're injured. In this situation, I recommend replacing out your dynamic strength exercises with their isometric variants. For example, you may replace your barbell back squat with a quarter squat and hold, or your overhand pull-up with a pull-up hold variation, otherwise known as a flexed arm hang. Scenario 2, you're looking to develop some more grappling specific strength in very niche movements. An example of this would be improving your gable grip squeeze and hold by incorporating some med ball squeezes into your training program. By adding this overcoming isometric exercise like the med ball squeeze, you're training your gable grip and squeeze in that bear hug type position, which translates to many different scenarios in jiu-jitsu. Scenario 3, you're trying to break through a strength plateau, or you're looking to just mix up your training program. In this case, I recommend adding isometric exercises as supersets with your primary dynamic strength exercises for the day. Or you can add in some isometric supersets at the end of your workout as a sort of finisher. Scenario 4, you're looking to develop your muscle endurance for grappling. Muscle endurance is a valuable athletic trait for all grappling performance. You don't need to have trained jiu-jitsu for very long to have felt the impact of your muscle burn and fatigue, particularly in your grips and arms after a tough competitive role. By adding in some isometric holds, overcoming isometrics, yielding isometrics, this will assist in developing your muscle endurance in conjunction with the high volume work that you may already be doing for muscle endurance. This was a brief look at some of the benefits of isometric training for grappling performance. If you want to take a deeper dive into developing your strength for jiu-jitsu performance, then check out episode 1 of the BJJ Strong podcast, How to Get Strong for BJJ, the complete beginner's guide. If you want to improve all areas of your grappling performance, your nutrition, your mobility, your strength, and most importantly, reduce your risk of injury while doing it, then check out BJJ Strong Online, the ultimate resource for grapplers. Thanks for watching.